Welcome to What Are You Sporting About podcast, a podcast about business, employment, sports, and entertainment to help educate, support, and guide you to your next level. Here's your host, attorney Savania de Barros.
Hi guys, it is Savania de Barros, protector of athletes. I'm also the founder and the attorney at S.L. de Barros Law Firm, where we represent 6- and 7-figure business owners and athletes in business. Today, I have the opportunity to interview my dear friend, Dr. Shaniqua Jones, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about her, and then we're going to dive in and allow her to talk more about what she does, her new book that just launched, and some practical tips that you can take into your own life. All right, so Dr. Shaniqua Jones completed her doctoral degree in interdisciplinary leadership with a specialization in higher education in May 2016. Her diverse background in academics and her profession, as well as her personal journey, has allowed her to understand the concerns of those she serves. But guess what? Dr. Jones has a national platform, and with this, and as the founder of Purple Path, she has been able to continue educating and serving students, parents or guardians, educators, and more through her restorative justice one-on-one courses offered online. She is a wife and a mother of 5 children, as well as an author of 7 astonishing works. That is amazing. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, attorney. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm happy to have you. So is there anything else in your background that you want to tell our listeners and viewers about?
Just being able to really navigate the educational system from 4th grade up into, postgraduate. It has been an amazing journey, and how I've best been able to serve the people that I encounter is through restorative justice and restorative practices from a life application perspective. And I'm just overjoyed to be here with you this morning.
Love it. So let's talk about restorative justice a little bit, because you are the expert of restorative justice. And the thing that people normally think about when they hear those 2 words are some type of criminality or some broken system, but they don't think of it in more broader terms where it can impact the individual, someone who may not be attached to the criminal type system, right? So whether you're professional or defendant in the criminal system, that is the mindset around it. So what is restorative justice to you, and how have you been using that mechanism to change lives?
Oh, most definitely. So when you think about restorative justice, I want people to think about, from your own personal experience. There has been a time in your life where you have been harmed, you've been offended, someone made you uncomfortable. It may not have been the most egregious or the most heinous. It may not have been to the extent where it was physical, but that may have created a barrier in that relationship, especially in a relationship that could be meaningful if we learn to break those barriers by having the conversation and being able to conquer those things that we typically don't want to confront. And so we have to learn how to see confrontation as a positive and not necessarily a negative if it's done appropriately. That we have to get to a point, especially now more than ever, we are going to, there's a heightened level of sensitivity right now, not just because of COVID-19, but how we are seeing racism pan out in every which way, from top leadership, global leadership, down to what we see every day with police interactions and with individuals being pulled over, driving while black. We could talk about all those things, and those are a little bit more egregious. But let's just think about in our own homes. Let's think about it as women, as young men, or whatever the case may be, as children. You live in a home, and there is some friction. Many of us understand, I remember growing up, you was to be seen and not heard as a child. You do as I say and not as I do. Let's talk about that for a moment. The way we may have been raised doesn't mean that it was right. It's just been our traditional method and has become our norm. And most times those type of encounters are very dysfunctional, that we pass those on from generation to generation until someone say like, this isn't right. And it's going to take someone that's going to be courageous to say like, I'm not going to operate like that. So I'm just thankful to be courageous and show people by modeling in a way that I've learned how to apologize to my children. What? That's unheard of.
Right.
In most cases, it's unheard of. And not only do I apologize because I'm not perfect, what I don't want to do is create this idea in their mind that we are not allowed to make mistakes. So in the situation they do make a mistake, they feel a certain kind of way because it's not something that's talked about. It's not something that's normalized. So we got to get to a point when we're talking about restorative justice, it's bringing people together who may have been harmed, offended, made uncomfortable about any particular situation. And what can we do? What are some of the tangible tools? What are some of the agreements that we could come to make sure that if this situation happens again, we have some tools that handle it better than what we've been, accustomed to doing. So I could go on, but this is my jam and I love what I do. And I'm just thankful and honored to be in spaces that gives me an opportunity to continue to speak about this great work.
Love it, love it, love it. So let's unpack some of that stuff because we're coming up on the end of Women's History Month, which is in March. And I definitely want to make sure that we talk about this, especially in a way that a lot of women, because you said that you finally have learned how to apologize to your children. That's major. That is so major, right? And so before we get into, well, let's just get into it. Let's just get into it because I'm already excited, right? Okay, so now that we have dispelled this myth that restorative justice only applies to the criminal aspect of life, but it can apply to your personal everyday life, okay, for women. So as a mother, the fact that you have learned to break down the barriers that have been created to technically be seen, not heard. I grew up that way as well, straight up from the country of Florida, southern child. Okay, so we grew up with all of those things. And it is hard for parents to realize that they may not have been perfect, right? And so let's use this platform for a second. So I speak a lot to athletes. What about the female athlete or former athlete who's now a mother and so hard driven on results and feel like there's no room for mistakes? How do you break down all of those barriers, that mental barrier that's been built up over time to now say, you know what, I need to apologize to my child?
Yep. And you know what? I can speak from this, not necessarily from an athletic perspective, but definitely from a restorative perspective in terms of being a mom. I just started to, for me, things have been normalized for me for so long. And it wasn't until I received exposure in the field of education, things that we, in my neighborhood, in my community, you were good if you graduated from high school and you go right into the field, whatever that may consist of. But for me, I decided I wanted to go into education. I wanted to learn, and for me, education was key. And I'm saying all this to I'll get to the point that for me, when I got in the world of education, I wasn't seen as a failure. I wasn't seen as the teen mom. I wasn't seen for all the things that the self-disappointment, along with the disappointment from others, I wasn't seen for that. And so that was my safe and brave space. But it stuck with me. And even though I didn't understand it then, as I started to get older and as my children started to get older, I realized like things are just not working. The things that I was taught and the things that I'm instilling into my children, it's okay. But I want to be more than okay. I want us to have a great relationship. I want them to be able to see me as a safe and brave space and not have to go to other, unfortunate situations to find that validation, even though validation is for parking, but we haven't been taught that either. So when it's all said and done, it's just been a beautiful experience, because when I start to sit in the power of reflection, which is one of the tips I want every woman to walk away with, if you don't ever do anything else, sit with yourself. No phone, no boo thing, if you have opportunity to just, even if that means you have to be in your bathroom, because I remember having to go to my bathroom just to get peace of mind, because I can hear the kids like, mama, and I'm like, oh my gosh. but sit with yourself, because the power of self-reflection is so huge and so important and vital to your growth. You start to see things, and our brain is conceptualized to only allow us to review trauma in a small frame. If it allowed us to think about every traumatic situation we've ever had, we will never be able to be productive individuals. So you might remember times where you're like, oh my gosh, once you have faced a trauma or a trigger that was once a trigger and you've been able to heal from that, then you find out like, oh my gosh, something else comes along. You forgot about that. And that's because your brain has been conceptualized to do that for you, so you won't ever be in overload. It's important that when you sit with yourself and you start to think about the things, from a compassionate, empathetic perspective for yourself, you're like, I didn't like how I felt. That didn't feel good to me. Or I remember that memory and that really made me feel like I was someone. If for any reason you start to sit in that reflection and have those type of conversations, and that's the feedback that you're giving to yourself, bring that over into motherhood. And think about, you may, especially in the world of competition, and if you are an athlete, you are result driven. Everything is about winning. There's no such thing as losing. You have to, overexert yourself. You have to be the number one, and you putting that type of pressure on yourself, and then you carry that over into motherhood. It will be an epic fail, because we have to get to a point where we learn how to humanize one another, humanize each other's experiences, and stop thinking that our children are not worthy of being able to be a part of the conversation, to have a dialogue, even if it means it sounds weird to you because of the generation gap, whatever the case may be. But I have learned to look at my children as individuals who are living in this household, who has a say-so, not in everything, but that's a deeper conversation. They know, they have the power, and we're learning how to effectively use our voice, because too often we tell our children, hey, speak up for yourself, but we're not giving them the tangible tools to learn how to do so in a way that's going to be conducive to get their point across. So that's that. But sit with yourself. That's one of my biggest tips, and I do that even to this day.
Girl, sit with yourself. So as you were talking about that, I started thinking about, while you're reflecting, it's okay to apologize to yourself, right? We mess up all the time, but you have to be able to just say, you know what? I really screwed that one up, but it's all good. Let's just keep it moving, because I think too, in that reflection moment, it helps you to reveal that you weren't perfect. You weren't perfect in every situation, that there are some things that you may need to discuss with yourself, but especially if you do have children that can understand, also using those experiences to then talk to your child or children about them, because as you are molding your kiddo, they can learn from your mistakes. Like, I've always grew up on the saying of a wise man doesn't go out and repeat the same mistakes. He learns from the mistakes others have made. Mm-hmm. So there are things that I've seen from my mom and from my aunties as women that I'm like, I don't want to do that. But just for myself, right? Mm-hmm. But what if I was not the child who had that discernment, who could pick those things out and say, okay, I don't want that for myself. But what if I was the child who truly mimicked in every word, everything that I saw, and I repeated that same behavior? Now we have generations of people who have not moved an ounce forward because we're consumed with what we only see, and there's been no restoration. Mm-hmm. Right?
And I'm that because I later learned that Iyanla Vanzant said something similar to what I thought I originated, but I realized I didn't. So I want to, kudos to her. But at the same time, one of the worst things a mom can do is not share her story with her children. And I say that because a little bit of my background just from some things we've had in terms of personal conversations, but from teen pregnancy, poverty mindset, homelessness, cervical cancer, domestic violence, rape, sexual assault. It happened to me, and I'm not trying to say like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful, I'm here now. And it feels great to come out on the other side, but I do myself I do my children, I do the people I serve in my full-time capacities a disservice if I'm not going to be willing to share part of my journey. And that's why, that's why this is so important. A journey not shared is a soul not healed. What's the point of going through anything you have to overcome if you're not going to be willing to share it? And sometimes I understand you may be an introvert. And that's where that spirit of discernment come in, where it is appropriate and the timing is right to share bits and pieces. You don't have to spill it all out in one time, but it's so important to share your life and share your journey and things you're going through. Because for me, I was hot-headed. I was the type of child, like, I could see stuff going wrong. Let me see for myself. And I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's just, and to this day, I'm still the same way. It's only difference is that I was a rebel without a cause, and now I'm a rebel with one. That is the only difference. And so I think it's very important that we not just normalize these type of conversations, but we humanize the people that we are in relationships with in close proximity, especially our children, those who we live in a household with, those we gave birth to, those that, that came along the way. And then not just be able to humanize them. The only way you can humanize someone's experience is by having a relationship. And the only way you can start a relationship is by seeing someone. The only way you can see someone is by saying hello. And oftentimes I could see you and say hello. And then I say, hey, Savanya, how you doing? And by the time you get ready to respond, guess what? I done walked off. Because we have normalized just saying, hey, how you doing? But what if you were comfortable enough in that particular moment to say, it wasn't the typical response like, hey, girl, I'm doing good. What if it wasn't that typical conversation? What if it wasn't that typical response? And now I just lost out on the opportunity to connect with you on a deeper level. And so it's going to take time. It's not something that happens overnight, especially in situations where we have a poverty mindset. And I'm not talking about poverty mindset in terms of financial. I'm talking about poverty mindset in terms of being open-minded about being able to see people for who they are and meet people where they are in order to get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, when we don't share our journeys, especially with those who are as closest to us, why? Right? Really unpacking that. What is that all about? And it brought me to one of the questions that I asked you, and I'm gonna ask you again here live. What does What Are You Sporting About mean to you?
And for oftentimes, and you got to be open-minded, because it's easy to be like, oh, that's not for me. I'm not an athlete. I wish I was. I played ball a little bit, but not like you, boo. But what are you sporting about is about being able to be transparent about your journey, being able to say what it is, who you are, be authentic and walk in that and hold your head high and let people know, like, this what I do and this how I was able to do it and this how I was able to overcome. Because all the time we talk about the success. Social media has made it where people like, hey, they flashing the money. You see the cars, you see like the businesses, all the reels about, hey, point this way, you make 6 figures doing this. But people don't talk about the trenches. People don't talk about the things that happen behind closed doors. People are not talking about, I had a breakdown. But in order to have a breakthrough, most times you got to have the breakdown. So that's what Are You Sporting About is to me. And I love it. And so I'm following you. I'm like your girl fan and I love you. And it's amazing. And I'm just thankful again to be here.
I'm thankful for you too, sis. And check this out. So I asked you that because based on what you stated before about sharing your experiences with your children or your family, but also now as an adult, and this was something I heard you say before, you were also able to understand your mother and where she was coming from, because all of you now were in a position to humanize. But before you can even humanize, you have to create that confidence to even share part of your story. So you do yourself a disservice, you do your family a disservice if they never really know where you coming from. There's no equal footing, no level ground, no nothing, because we're all playing at different levels because we have no idea what the other person had to deal with. And sometimes that fuels how they make certain decisions, right? That may fuel how they go into their personal life and parent. That creates or fuels the environment that they create. And it's not that they will want to do something negative, but sometimes I feel like the more things are done, the more intricately woven those issues become in a person. They totally take those things and they internalize it so deeply that they don't even realize the outside effects that it's having on the people who are around them. So that's why I wanted to ask you that. But I want to talk more about this humanization concept, because I attended your book launch, your new book launch, Pineapple Orange Juice. And this was one of the concepts that was brought up. And I truly, truly enjoy this conversation because I'm a mom of a toddler. And I always want to make sure that I'm parenting the best way that I can and not there's some good things about me being a former athlete that are amazing for, character and all this stuff. But I also want to make sure I'm not driving this result-driven personality into him where it's causing anxiety or things that can be more negative, right? And so talk to us a little bit about Pineapple Orange Juice, what you're trying to do with this book, and then we'll tie that back in with the humanization concept and why that is in your book.
Gotcha. So, I think what's so unique about this book is already going to catch your attention because of the title. And so you and your viewers, along with a few other people who may know the background story, I'm going to tell you, but I still want you to buy the book too, right? So I had one particular situation with a mom and her two sons. And every time prior to me, really delving deep, I was new as the head of deans at this particular school. And so I was just learning for myself who's who, what's what, the do's, the don'ts, the ins and outs, all that great stuff. And these two particular boys, they ran havoc in this school building. And I was like, oh my God, what did I sign myself up for? But for me, the relationship I had with them was so authentic that I saw them outside of what everyone else was able to see. But it was also an ego check for me because for a while, I was like, I didn't go to school to get a doctorate degree to become a babysitter. That I did not do. But the only safe and brave space that those two individuals had, the two boys, were with me. So they pretty much, if they were in school, they spent the majority of their time in the dean office with me. They were able to do their work with me. They slept in my office. They ate with me. We broke bread. We talked about everything. They needed that one-on-one, but I realized quickly that they needed a therapeutic school, that what we had in terms of the way we operated was not conducive to meet their needs. And if you know anything about education, it's an uphill and sometimes a downhill battle where you are trying to document every which way possible so that you can get the ultimate results that you're looking for and have those two young men placed in a therapeutic school. So fast forward, I had one situation one day where both boys, they were one grade, one was in fourth and one was in fifth grade. And you would think I'm talking about high school, the way the situation happened. And I called the mom because they really did something where we got to normalize the fact that restorative justice does not mean that you just get a slap on the wrist. No, there might be consequences where it leads to suspension and expulsion, depending on the way the situations pan out. So I say all that to say that I called the mom, and the mom, called me everything but a child of God. And she curses me out, and then she hangs up on me. And mind you, she's so loud that the boys are hearing everything that she's saying to me. And they felt bad for me, even though that was their mom. But your mom just cursed out someone that cares about you. And so they're looking at me, and that was the first time I was able to really see them for who they were, that they had emotions. They had a sense of compassion and empathy, even though they may not have had the context or the language or the words to go along with that. And they was like, Dr. Jones, I apologize. Like, I tried to tell you, my mama turned up. And so as we're talking, mom calls back and she like, Dr. Jones, we shouldn't be arguing. And I'm looking at the phone like, I ain't even get a word in edgewise, but whatever. So she said, well, if the boys got to come home, do me a favor. And if you could stop at the liquor store in Michigan and pick up me some Tito's and pineapple orange juice, I greatly appreciate it, because that's the only way I'm gonna be able to handle them if you bring them home. And even though I laughed in my mind, I was like, this is wild. This is crazy. And so that's how the title came about. And so what does that really mean? I took that one particular situation, coupled with other situations that I've had throughout my educational experience, maybe over the last decade, and started to normalize the people that we typically would not humanize, or humanize those that we typically wouldn't humanize, because that barrier, like, it's hard to hear and see someone when they're cursing you out. But it's going to take someone to say, like, she's hurting. and there's some unhealed and unresolved issues. I mean, we could talk all day about all the things that I was able to see over time, but how can we effectively do the work that needs to be done with the children if the parents are hurting? If we implement a way of life in terms of, embedding and infusing and implementing and properly executing what restorative justice look like in a school, to walk away from that zero tolerance policies, but they go home to a dysfunctional situation, what are we doing? So I'd rather take the approach like, let's throw the box, they keep saying like, let's think outside the box. No, let's throw the box away. Because what happens is, if you keep the box and think outside the box, when you start to get uncomfortable because we're doing something we never done before, what you gonna do? You're gonna revert back to that box. But if we throw the box away, you don't have a choice. You are exposed, and we gotta do better. We have a perfect opportunity right now in the midst of this pandemic to reimagine education and redefine the village. That mom needs support. And if we can't support mom and anyone else that's attached to those two children, we're not going to meet the needs of their children. They're not going to get the academic success that we're looking for. They're not going to have the social emotional piece that they need. They're not going to be able to be productive individuals outside. I don't want to just prepare you for what you do in front of me. I want to prepare you for the next grade and the grade after that. Encounters you may have with the law, encounters you may have with, possible employers, encounters you're going to have. And, if you decide to go into higher ed, because if you don't have the tangible and the soft skills and the sustainable skills that's going to allow you to be as productive as you possibly can be, you're going to get in that college classroom, or you're going to get in the boardroom, or you're going to get, in front of your employer, and they say something you don't like, and you're not going to know how to respond. You don't know what a healthy debate is, because the moment someone says something you don't like, you ready to flip the table over. Now, we got to move away from that. And so pineapple orange juice is really an opportunity for us to have a discussion and tap into our critical thinking skills as to what are we doing, and understand that there's three people within you: the person you were, the person you are, and the person you will be, and they should never be the same.
Dang, hold on, wait. I do have a mic, but it's in the cabinet. I wish I had it here so I could just drop the mic, because that is good. That is good. So, I'm so stuck on the fact that this mom said that's the only way I can deal with them, is because, see, when I hear pineapple orange juice, I just think that you're going to the store to pick up juice. I didn't know it was a alcoholic beverage, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that this mother has to technically be medicated to deal with her children, that's something that I personally don't understand that, right?
Same.
But we can find ways to understand in a different perspective, right? Outside of what we would normally do, by humanizing that experience and understanding, like you said, you recognize, all right, why would this first off, this mom is cursing me out, and I'm an educator who actually cares about her kids, and then she has the audacity to ask me to go and pick up alcoholic beverage, which to me that completely flirts the ethical lines.
I swear that she was specific, I need this Tito's vodka to go along with the pineapple orange juice. I'm like, she's serious. Because mind you, what I didn't tell you, she cursed me out again when I got to her home with the boys. Now, mind you, before I even get to her home, I'm like, okay, since I know they're going to be home for a few days, just from the conversation, I know this is dysfunctional. So we stopped, many might call it Harold's. It was something similar to Harold's. We got chicken wings, pizza puffs. I'm not saying it was the healthiest thing, because again, as much as I want them to be, Tito is good. As much as I want them to, have healthier options, you're talking about the neighborhood that, the school is in, the neighborhood that they live in, don't provide those. So I'm going to get you together, make sure you have the basic necessities. And we stopped and got a few things. We basically went grocery shopping in the restaurant, and got home. I got bags of stuff. I'm all happy for them. And she curses me out again, because out of all the stuff we got, guess what was not included? That pineapple orange juice and that Tito's. So she cursed me out again. And then the neighbors was like, is that the caseworker? It was crazy. And I'm like, wow. And even though I'm able to laugh about it, it's really, it's really sad, because that's just one situation. What about the other situations where people may have heard, or you might have assumed, but because we don't want to meet people where they are, because we've learned to say, like, that ain't my lane, that ain't my business, I ain't got time for that, that's too much work. She'll be all right. Let's pray about it. Like, let's, talk about all the things that we typically would say, but it's going to take someone to be courageous. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to have the title to be courageous. You can be courageous from the moment you wake up and decide, like, I want to be. Yep.
Correct. And it makes me think about too, I personally feel that women already carry a lot. Mm-hmm. Right. So just taking this example, this mom who basically inspired this book, whether she was able to humanize your experience in that moment, I don't know. But that's also the other side of humanization. So you as the educator can humanize the fact that this person needs help. Mm-hmm. But what about the other individual who's on the other end, receiving end from your lashing out? Have you humanized their experiences? Because what you're doing in your environment at your household, you're sending a box of mess to school every day because there's no restoration in your home, right? And so the people who have to deal with that, how are they able to cope? How are they really, moving forward in their lives and able to help these students, for instance, like what you did, right?
I do want to shout out a few people. I might not say their name, but the principal of the school at that time, the assistant principal, and then one of the student support staff members, like, we really came together as a whole, that even though that was a counter that I had, we have to understand that when we're talking about being restorative or restorative justice and restorative practices, we have to understand that when you are making the decision to walk away from that poverty mindset, walk away from zero tolerance policy, walk away from, if this is the infraction and this is the consequence, and even going into, what we talk about, the school to prison pipeline, we have to get to a point where, and I believe I saw a comment on your LinkedIn in regards to the conversation we were having today, where someone was talking about leadership. And I was so thankful for leadership to say, like, one, Dr. Jones, are you okay? Because mind you, I got cursed out, and even though I laughed about it, I really was messed up. Like, Joe, if she'd have caught me 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would have been bananas. But I love the fact that they was like, you need to take a step back if you need to leave for the rest of the day. How many, you don't get that, because oftentimes it's like, you are in this role, you knew what you signed up for, so hey, it is what it is. And I'm glad that they didn't have that type of attitude. And so not only did they support me, we sat together and brainstormed of ways that we could support their mom, support those 2 boys, and then have the tangible resources. Like, who are the resources in the community that we know that we can speak highly of, that's going to be able to stay in the trenches with them? And I truly appreciate leadership for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. My husband and I, we always talk about different things. And sometimes I feel like I ask him somewhat tough questions, because I want to know from his perspective, how does he measure success? How does he measure whether a person's a good leader? And we had this conversation the other day. And one of the things that we talked about was also having courage, but also listening, because leaders have to sometimes follow, and they have to listen to the people who are around them in order to know how to lead. And so I love that you put that nugget in, because it brings us back to restorative justice practices, and especially in the woman, from the woman perspective, to be a leader in your household, you have to listen. Mm-hmm. You have to listen. And sometimes you must follow the lead of the people who are around you, because they're going to tell you and give you the tips on what's not working, or why they feel the way that they feel, or why they feel like they can't do X, Y, and Z, or why they feel like, you always have to, they're always being fussed at, or whatever it may be, right? But it helps you to be a good leader. And that in itself is restorative, because now you're getting tangible information to help you to make better decisions, not even just as a woman, but as a mother, right? As a wife.
If I can for a moment. So, and this, I'm an open book. So with that being said, there's a lot of things I share. And just because I'm an open book don't mean I share everything. But what I do want to share with your audience right now is that something I share with you, and you came into my life at the best time. When I say it was ordained by God and God alone, you are my sister for life, right? And so you came into my life right before we purchased our very first home. And I prayed to God. I said, God, for years, I lied to myself because I was under the assumption that it was impossible. Because of all the things I've gone through, it's impossible for me to be a homeowner and have the dream home that I want. I might be able to get like something, here or there just to get by. But not only did he answer my prayer, I asked him, I said, I'll be 40. I made 40 last year. I said, it's down to the wire. And so I'm tired of lying to myself, because people fail to realize you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to your higher power. He knows you. He knew you before you even made. So I don't know why you want to play yourself like that. But I say all that to say that he allowed us 6 weeks before I made 40 to close on our home, October 15th of last year, the home of my dreams, the home of my children's dreams, the home of my husband's dream. And it has been an emotional experience, because these are the things I worked hard for. These are the things I prayed for. And so to come out on the other side and starting to see the fruit of my labor, it's amazing. And so I say that I've even seen the change in my children, that they see my hustle and they see my grind. And a lot of times people don't like using that verbiage, but that's how I roll. And so I feel like sometimes I am the male version of Eric Thomas. Like, I got that dog, And so I've noticed we've had conversations, because I could sit here and decorate the entire house the way I want it, but it's not our house. This is our home. And so getting input like, hey girls, what color you think this room should be? How, what are you thinking of in terms of color scheme, in terms of, furniture you want? Do you, what, tell me, talk to me. And when I tell you, getting their input has been one of the greatest things I've been able to do, that I see the change of them holding themselves accountable. There's a lot of times I don't even have to come in and delegate and put the hammer down and say, hey, why the dishes not, why this is not done? Or it's like, hey, okay, we know Tuesdays is my laundry day, Thursdays my laundry day. Hey, Sanaa, are you up and ready for class? And so they have been able to really hone in on the idea of being able to be responsible, self-responsibility, as well as holding others accountable in the household. And then too, me giving them the tools and showing them and modeling the way. I mean, this is the cleanest we probably ever been. Like, I don't have to ask, I don't have to delegate as much as I used to. And that pressure is no longer there, because this is something we all want. And so it's very important that we not, again, this goes back to humanizing and normalizing certain conversations that we typically don't want to have. Humanize our children's experiences. Just because they are a child, they don't have an opportunity to participate in certain conversations or decision-making processes. How do they learn to do these things if they don't get the opportunity to do it in the home? And so that's why when you get the gang leader, JoJo from the block, come in, not JoJo, I don't want to say JoJo. Nope, that's my boy.
That's my baby nickname.
Look, crash that. Why we, Pookie from the end of the block, like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Because they preying on our babies. And so if you don't do what you need to do, and if you don't have a support system, that support system may not be the idealistic person either. Because a lot of times when we have family and there's been some confusion from the past, and now, we can't talk to Auntie Sophia because, my mama, come on now. We gotta start bridging the gap, and we got a perfect opportunity. We losing people every day to something we've never heard of before. If we heard of it, like, God, we gotta do better. We gotta do better.
The biggest thing that I heard from you, wrapping all of that up, was mental restoration. We have to have a mental restoration of our own mind, right? And then not only that too, but like a spiritual restoration, emotional restoration, because you when you can't find any restoration in yourself, you are then creating other people who are off balance.
Yep.
They go out into the world and they can't cope. They can't properly communicate. They can't hold down a job, because as soon as something happened, boom, I'm going off on this person, right? Instead of having the language and the tools to be able to deal with conflict, to be able to really speak about how they feel. Like, that's a total skill. I didn't know. Like, the family I came from, I always thought that people went through conflict, but that they talked about conflict. until I realized later, the more I grew and the more rooms that I entered or relationships that I built, I realized that a lot of people don't have those skills. A lot of people aren't able to approach conflict with a positive, welcoming, like, okay, we got to do this right now. Like, right, we're gonna approach the conflict, we're gonna deal with it, we're gonna speak our true feelings, and then we move on. That is a true skill that a lot of people are lacking. And a lot of people are lacking approaching the conflict that they're having on a daily, monthly, annual basis within themselves. They can't even be real with themselves and have that real conversation in solitude.
Yep.
Right? So we have talked about normalizing conversations, humanizing other people's experiences, apologizing to self, but also sharing your story with your children, with your family. Are there any other tips or methods that you have for women who are trying to find a way out of the trenches?
So for me, this pandemic, I'm big on trying to make connections. So I'm like, if you think about restorative justice, you got RJ. So I'm like, okay, I come with the 4 R's, which is radical love. It's one thing for me to say I love you, Savania, but it's another thing for me to have a conversation with you about something that I may have experienced or something that I hoped for, and then next thing I know is delivered to my home like that tea. All right, like, yeah, let's talk about that. That's for me, that's radical love, because it wasn't me coming to you like being manipulative. It was just a conversation that 2 sisters were having, and then you asked me to do something. And anytime you call on me, because we had that kind of relationship, and I know you operate at the highest level of integrity, that when you call on me, it's a lot of things I won't even do research on, because I'm like, if Savania said it, that's just what it is. And you already know what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, we're not doing that because Savania, nope, it's over. That's radical love for me. Because it's about the things I didn't say specifically and direct to you, but you heard me. And not only did you hear me, that means in order to hear me, you have to see me. In order to see me, you have to say, like, that's my sister, right? That's radical love for me. So that's 1. 2 is reciprocity. There's so much I could learn from you, and there's so much you can learn from me, that where I may not be, I won't consider it a weakness, but where there's need for improvements, you help me, and vice versa. That's reciprocity. It's a give and take. And so a lady told me recently, she was like, you have one hand to give with, and you have another hand to take. And I just been looking at my hands like, all right, I got you. It's more than a transaction, it's a relationship. And that's where that reciprocity come in. So we got radical love and we got reciprocity. 3 is reimagine education. Right now, like I said, we have an opportunity to reimagine what education look like. And I'm not just talking about our typical traditional educational system, but like, how are we educating our children in our homes? Now you have the educator who's understanding more about where the parent is coming from. You have the parent who now better understand where the educator is coming from, because before, when I was calling you prior to COVID and say around 2:20 every day, something is happening with our baby, not your baby, not my baby, our baby. And now you're starting to see, because that baby is at home with you at 2:20 now, and you starting to see. So now you're like, the educator wasn't tripping. I thought she was, or he was, right? So that's another opportunity for us to reimagine education. What does this look like for our one child in particular? Stop trying to take this one size fit all, that everyone's going to receive, this grade. Like, I'm done with grades. And I had a conversation about that the other night. That does nothing for me. So we have opportunity to reimagine education. And last but not least, number 4 is restore humanity. And that starts within. The healing process don't start from the outside in, it starts from the inside out. And that's what I got. Radical love, reciprocity, reimagine education, and restore humanity.
Man, drop that mic one more time, because woo, okay. Restore humanity starts from the inside and then move outward. It reminds me of this message I heard, and I cannot remember this pastor's name, but a young guy. I think he's also has like a recording deal. And my cousin sent me a link, and I'm listening to this YouTube series, and he says something about cognitive dissonance. People can't function because what you say don't connect with your mind or with your heart, right? And so even if you say, okay, well, I want to be restored, I want to be in a position where I can do these things, whatever they may be, or I want to be in a position where I can take my child or children to X, Y, and Z or whatever, right? What's stopping you? Because the things that you're saying, you have cognitive dissonance. There's a complete disconnect because you haven't been restored from within. And so because you haven't been restored from within, your heart is disconnected with your mind and your mind is disconnected with your words.
Come on.
Man. Girl, that's deep. You literally put me in the mind of this pastor. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So for anyone who's listening to this, it doesn't matter whether you have degrees, doesn't matter whether you hold this corporate CEO job. All of us need restoration in certain areas of our lives. Take these tips, these 4 R's, be radical. And 2, be radical with yourself. Love yourself so much, okay? Stop waiting or looking for the next person to give you radical love, the love that you feel like you need. Guess what? You're already equipped to give yourself radical love. Love yourself. And then reciprocity, as you were talking about, I thought about boundaries and I thought about balancing act of how you have to also be cognizant of those. And I literally just had this conversation yesterday too with another amazing woman, Bissy, if you're watching this, about how there's some people who are only set up to take. And you have to be careful because it can deplete you so much that you have no more room to do what you need to do for yourself, right? So you have one hand where you give, but you also have the other hand, which is for taking. And what I love that what you said was, it's not about giving and taking, it's about building relationships, which is so true. Because it does bring us back to the village mentality of what you spoke about earlier. We need to start building communities and relationships around us where we can build each other up, where we can restore each other, right? Not where we want them to be, but restore them in a place where they are so that they can be better for themselves. And then when you're better for yourself, you can go out into the world and help someone else be better.
Yep.
And reimagining this education, oh my Jesus. I can't imagine what a lot of parents have been going through, especially with school age kids, but it has put a flashlight on education as a whole, parental environments, right? How children are learning. It's put a flashlight on the disparity of resources. We've already known that there was a disparity in resources, but now your child can't even get a proper education because they can't afford a computer.
Or this was and I know time is winding down, but this for me, this is the part where it's been a silver lining, because in some of the neighborhoods where we have pretty much everything has been depleted. Obviously not, because all of a sudden our children are getting, even if they have to have a rental agreement, they're receiving brand new tablets or any type of electronic device. And on top of that, okay, you may have the electronic device, but you may not have internet access. So here go a hotspot. Where were these resources? We have to get to a point where we're more proactive than reactive. But the other piece to it is that now that they have these tools and they're learning like technology in a way they may not have ever been exposed to it before, that now as a college professor, when you come into my classroom, it's not, you're not ill-equipped like you were prior to COVID, because what happened is now you have some of the contextual frameworks because of what you experienced here in the midst of COVID, that when you come over into the land of higher ed, you might thrive a little bit better. And hopefully that's the case. But what I've seen is prior to COVID, things that were happening was I would have a college student come into my class that looked like me and don't have the soft skills and don't have the discipline. And now they're not able to thrive even though they may have this athletic scholarship, but keep in mind, this athletic scholarship is riding on this academic piece. And I've seen, that's a whole nother discussion. But if you don't have the soft skills to communicate and comprehend the message, because we keep saying communication is key, and that is not true. It's comprehension. because I could communicate with you all day long, but if you are not understanding the words that are coming out of my mouth, and it goes in one after the other, and you're not able to comprehend it, we're losing. We're just talking. And so when you have those soft skills to thrive in a college classroom, not only are you able to get to the needs of what, you know, who you are, and be able to tap into those critical thinking skills and see things from other people's perspective, but now you thrive because you have an athletic scholarship that you know, it's a give and take, academics and athletics, right? We could talk about that, because I had a particular student who was doing a great job athletic, you know, in the athletic world, but was not thriving in the classroom, because the moment someone said something he didn't like, he wanted to turn up. And this is not high school. The dean office is not there where we're going to sit down and have a conversation with parents and things of that nature. No. And after so many incidents, I don't care how you might be the number one star athlete, but we got too much riding on you. And, you know, if as an institution, if we decide to just keep sweeping things under the rug, now we have changed the culture and climate. So now we got to make an example out of you. So yeah, you may have been a star student, but you can't be here anymore. So, I mean, we got so much work to do, but this has been a silver lining for me, because now students are being able to have they are equipped with the tools and skills and resources that they need in the midst of this pandemic to thrive in ways they may not have had opportunity to do so before. And again, we have to be proactive. We should not have to wait for a pandemic. We should not have to wait for another Black man or Black woman to be shot down and all these different things for us to take action. We know what we need to do, and we got to stop having, you know, taking a blind eye to the things that we already know what's happening, and be the courageous person. We gotta have the courage.
I agree. And one of our listeners said, I was thinking, like, why don't you use your stimulus check to buy your child a new laptop and better internet service so he or she can have the tools to be successful? They're the future, not you. Which makes no sense. But remember, you talked about the poverty mindset, just always going out there, buying up everything and making everybody else rich. But in that poverty mindset is like, consume everything, but not the right things, right? Not investing where it's important. And that's a piece of that mental restoration that has to be done with a lot of people. A lot of people. Yeah. So I know we have been going for a long time. I love this conversation. You know, I can talk to you forever and forever. So I want you to tell us, what is next for Dr. Jones?
What is next? What I can say is I got an 8th book coming soon in regards to an organization that I'm working with that's really honing in on the idea of what does the job market look like for single parents. And so I've been able to develop a 90-day journal for the first 90 days of you being in this program. And I just thought, like, this would be great for people who need to have that power of self-reflection. Things I talk about are the things that I do. So that's one thing. And, you know, just being able to travel, you know, and be safe about it. But I know I have to get back to doing some of the things I was doing, but do it in moderation and do it, of course, safely, and being able to, you know, support my children in their businesses. All my children are, all 4 of my daughters are published authors. My son, he has his business and he's on the pre-med track at Xavier University in Louisiana. So these are the things that my husband, he wants to delve into, you know, he may have a 9 to 5 where he works the graveyard shift, want to delve into what entrepreneurship looks like. So just being able, the way my family has supported me over the years, I want to be able to give back and support them at the same time. And then, I'm going back into the field of college education. I have a few opportunities to teach a few courses and starting in the fall. And I love what I do full time. And that's where I'm at. You know, I'm developing a district-wide restorative justice plan, and it's been an amazing experience. The research, tying the loose ends together, and just being able to come from the frame of mind of meeting my students where they are. So I want to speak from their voice and their perspective when I'm developing this plan.
Man, you know what? First off, I just love the person that you are.
Thank you.
And I do. I really, really do. And the fact that you've overcome so much is a testament that where you are now, if you are watching it later, listening to this, where you are now is not where you have to be. You don't have to remain there, right? There is something better on the other side. And to make that first step literally takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. You said that you didn't even think that you deserved to have the house that you wanted before you were 40. There were a lot of things that a lot of us don't think that we deserve to have because either we lack the confidence to have it, we lack the faith to even dream about it. We lack the ability to restore our minds and thinking that it's even possible to do those things. I'm just so happy for you, Shanika. I'm so happy for you. And all the things that you've accomplished, your entire household is thriving because you learned to listen, apologize, and share your story. You learned the real tools of what leadership is. And your family is thriving because of that. So kudos to you. Where can people follow you and connect with you and purchase? I did put the link in here for your book, but you can tell them again.
I'm trying to get my Instagram page up. I'm maxed out on friends on Facebook, and I do have a Facebook business page, which is Purple Path by Dr. Shaniqua Jones. And then you also could connect with me, of course, on Instagram at Purple Path by Dr. J. And then I have a website, www.purplepathbydrj.com. You can purchase all my books. I have merchandise such as tote bags, affirmation cards, that, things that have gotten me through. I'm praying and hoping it helps you too. I got to pass it on to someone else. And then also I have a restorative justice one-on-one course that you could take, and you could take it asynchronously opposed to when I do them live via Zoom. So you can, there's other opportunities that are coming up. I'm working on a time management course, and yeah, that's me, www.purplepathbydrj.com. And then of course, Facebook and Instagram, Purple Path by Dr. J.
Love it. Love it. I know. I'm not going to even say I hope y'all do, because I know y'all did. I know you got so much value out of this session today. So thank you again for coming on to the show. You guys, this has been an amazing, amazing time for me. I am your host, Savania DeBarros, the protector of athletes. And guess what? I'll check you again next week with another amazing show for What Are You Sporting About? Make sure that you go and follow Dr. Jones on Instagram and Facebook, all right, at Purple Path by Dr. J, and visit her website at purplepathbydrj.com and get a copy of her new book, Pineapple Orange Juice. Should we saying that going out? I wish I had a whole production team behind it. Pineapple Orange. All right, guys. We'll holler at you later. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on What Are You Sporting About podcast. Make sure to visit our website, prosportlawyer.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite platform is, so you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes or iHeartRadio. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, What Are You Sporting About? Attorney Savania DeBarros is available for private consulting at sldebarros.com. And remember, we're here to educate, support, and guide you in your journey to success, because we're all sporting about something.